so I became like a really bad alcoholic. Tried to take my life 4 times. I know that I also self-harmed on my left arm for a really long time. I was in and out of like psychiatric hospitals. I struggled with depression. I didn't like my skin color, my hair. I never thought that I was pretty.
To some, he's just a man.
He's just a man in the city.
To others, just a Sunday voice behind a pulpit.
But to us,
he's a voice that called purpose out of pain.
The shepherd who never stopped believing. The pastor who poured out his life
so we could live
ours differently.
And now, from the very seats where we received, we speak
from our seats to your heart.
I'm Shekinah Mason. I'm 19 years old. I'm from Ohio, and what I do is I really like to draw. It's like one of my favorite hobbies. Where I serve at in the church, I serve in greeters. I think I was 16, 17. I was working at Smashburger, and it was about to close. And so Mattia, Nia, and her sister and her mom had came in, and I got an attitude, and I was like, hey, we're about to close, so you guys have to like leave. And I was really mean about it, and I felt really bad. So 10 minutes later, I went back and I had apologized, and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry. It was just we were about to close, and you guys came in at the last minute. So then Mattia, she goes out to her car and she comes back in and she gives me this, it was like the bulletins. She gave it to me and she said, hey, you should check out our church. And I was like, okay. So I started coming for about like 3 weeks, and then I stopped showing up because I went back to Ohio. I ended up coming back to Arizona last year, and so I started coming back. I know that I was a very angry person, and I was always like depressed. I know that I wanted to take my life at like a very early age. I started drinking when I was 8. I took off when I was 12, so I became like a really bad alcoholic. I was drinking all the way up until I was 18. I know that I tried to take my life 4 times, and I know that I also self-harmed on my left arm for a really long time. I was in and out of like psychiatric hospitals because nobody could ever figure out what was wrong with me. I struggled with depression. I also struggled with bulimia. I didn't like how I looked. I didn't like my skin color. I didn't like my hair. I never thought that I was pretty. And I know that I struggled with like self-awareness and being comfortable in my own skin and being confident. And I struggled with that for such a long time. I know that I was telling people when I was an alcoholic, I told them how much I drank and like how like I drank every morning, I drank at night, I drank when I woke up, and I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I only drink like on the weekends, so I only party only on the weekends and almost every day, but I'm not an alcoholic, right? And some bad things happened to me too at like an early age. That's where like my alcoholism came in, is when all of like the abuse, thinking that people like cared about me when they really didn't. They were just out to kind of like get me, and that like is what triggered, I feel like, most of my depression, most of my anxiety, most of my not wanting to talk to people, and like the self-harming because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. But Stonepoint showed me that everybody goes through things too. You're not the only person who goes through stuff. And then what Pastor Gene has taught me, stop telling God how big your problems are and start telling the devil how big your God is. At first, like I sat there in the pew and I didn't really process that at first, but then like when I left, I was like, hold on, this is what he meant. Like I really stopped complaining about things because I realized I was not the only person who went through stuff. I was not the only person who was struggling with certain things. It was just about how I was taking those certain things. And I continued coming to church. I know that sometimes I like got really nervous whenever he brought something up, like really like hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm about to leave service. Like I'm so scared right now. But then eventually I stopped being scared and I realized that there are things that I need to work on. I remember when he said everything that you had went through, that doesn't identify you, and that's like what he had closed out with. And I just started bawling. Like I went to the church bathroom and I just started crying. Finally like realized that everything that I had went through does not identify who I am today. Every single challenge I faced, the alcoholism, the trauma, the self-harm, suicide, depression, everything that people wanted to diagnose me with did not define me as a person. And it took me so long to realize that. And I started like genuinely talking to people. I started opening up to people. I started smiling more, and I became so much more like full of life, full of like the word. Who I am today, I'm actually 9 months sober. I feel like I'm way more stronger than I was last year. Like this confidence about me, I know that I never used to be as confident. I feel comfortable in my own skin today. Pastor Gene, I just want to say that thank you for telling us what we need to hear and not what we want to hear. Being obedient to God and replying to that calling on your life, because you have made an impact on like a lot of people's lives. You made a big impact on my life, and you're just telling us what God is telling you, and that is like the most so cool. And I just like love that, and I just like love coming to service every Sunday, coming to service every Wednesday. What is God gonna tell him next? How is he gonna deliver the message? And he says it in the most nicest, meanest tone ever. I'm just like, okay, yeah, I hear you. But happy birthday, Pastor Gene. I hope it's a good one.